past the Jewish school, chances are you'll see guards at the entrance in case of violence. Just last month, the court in Sydney stopped a synagogue from being built in Waverley because of the risk of neighbours getting hurt in a terrorist attack in a synagogue. And the people most likely to do that attacking, well, they're not Christians. They're not Hindus. It is a curious thing. Few of the existing big Jewish groups call out Islam, and they certainly don't defend free speech either. And so a new organisation's been set up, conservative, the Australian Jewish Association. Joining me is its president, David Adler, former Deputy Medical Secretary of the Australian Medical Association. David, thanks for your time.
Delighted to be here.
Why are you setting up this Australian Jewish Association?
Well, to be honest, it's something done with some reluctance. We're doing it because over the last few years, the existing community bodies have moved more and more and more to the left, not only on political issues, but away from genuine Jewish values, Torah-based values that are the foundation of Judaism.
And free speech, don't forget to add that.
There's a variety of policy issues that have crystallised a movement within those in the community that have conservative political values that support genuine Jewish values.
See, this is what I don't understand. When you say that, and you're absolutely right, okay? Because I've dealt with, and I'm friends with a number of the people running these, but as I keep saying when I address Jewish meetings, this is based on the paradigm that if you turn to the left will look after you. Right now, the greatest threats to Judaism comes from people on the left.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to take as a priority certain values that have been abandoned. You mentioned free speech. That's absolutely one of them. There are certain aspects of Israel advocacy that we believe have been abandoned, those that concern Jewish identity, particularly in the biblical heartlands, Judea and Samaria, which some people call the West Bank, the status of Jerusalem as the eternal undivided capital, and as you alluded to in your introduction, there is a threat within Islam. We see it manifest across Europe. We see the effect on Jewish communities across Europe, not just in the Middle East. And we need to start a discussion about this.
But why are the mainstream Jewish groups so reluctant to get involved in that debate? They do lots of interfaith stuff, of course. Sure. They side with Muslim groups about anti-free speech. Why this reluctance?
Well, I mean, really that's a question for them, but it seems to me that a priority of political correctness has been put ahead of principle.
Is there any doubt who the Jewish, the guards outside Jewish schools, the main threat, where that comes from?
No, there's been numerous studies done. There was almost an industry created after 9/11. All of a sudden, governments wanted to know and understand these groups in the community. And I've reviewed 50 or 60 studies done by research centres, done by university departments of social and political science. And there's a lot of data, some released just this year. There was a study done by the University of Oslo which reviewed anti-Semitism in 7 countries. 6 out of those 7 countries, the predominant factor was motivated by Islam. The anti-Semitic events were undertaken.
I don't know what the mainstream, why they're so shy. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's not wanting to exacerbate things, I don't know. But what's happened since you announced your formation of the group? I've noticed that you've been attacked by Victorian MP Philip Davidakis, Phil, who's also Jewish, is praising groups like Zionism in Victoria and the Beth Weitzman Centre in Melbourne for refusing to host your event on the threat of Islam to Jews. Are you getting a lot of this kind of stuff?
We're getting a lot of it in Melbourne, but not elsewhere. I need to make the point that we have already held these discussions in a number of other places. Notably earlier this year, there was a major meeting which was convened by a roof Christian body, the Australian Christian Nation Association. The event was in the New South Wales Parliament. And they had sent a delegation to the Middle East to have a look at the effect on Coptic Christians and others, and they wanted someone to come and talk about the effect on Jewish communities, which I did, no problems. Last month, there was an educational conference in New Zealand, in Auckland. The topic was discussed, no problems. Just last night in Sydney, the president of the New South Wales Rabbinical Council, Rabbi Paul Lewin, hosted an event in the North Shore Synagogue, no problems.
But Melbourne seems to be different.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's not just a Jewish community. Melbourne seems to be the reddest state in so many areas. I don't know whether it's because the ACTU was headquartered here, or I don't know what it is, but it's very different.
Well, it's certainly brought out some of the ferals. There's no doubt about that. And they'll make a noise, but they're not going to stop a discussion, a legitimate discussion.
Well, I noticed that someone who's associated with your group, Avi Yemeni, was trying to hold a...
he's not associated with the group. He did offer to assist with social media early in the place, and for a whole variety of reasons, the office bearers decided that that was the end of the role. And
bad luck, Avi. Well, he's a little bit controversial, but I noticed that when he went to organise a meeting with Conservative Jews in Caulfield with Pauline Hanson, it had to be called off because of security threats from the left. Have you copped any of this?
We have copped threats, and security will be present at our event on Sunday. It's interesting, the MP you quoted, as well as those
Phil
who
Dalidakis
have criticised us, have got things completely wrong. Their allegation is that discussing this issue will incite hatred, violence, whatever. Now, I want to make it 100% clear to anyone listening that this is not a discussion about all Muslims. It's not a discussion about the majority of Muslims. It's a discussion about a minority. It's a discussion about a section within the ideology. And we do not incite anything. We expose those that do. There is a spectacular inverted morality here in play. We're getting criticised for something that we're actually exposing and want to address.
How much danger are Jews in Australia now?
Australia is a relatively safe place. Anti-Semitism events are monitored, and we have had to increase security across the country at all synagogues, at Jewish schools, at Jewish events. And fortunately, the amount of actual physical violence is relatively low. We have had vandalism, graffiti. There's a lot of chatter on social media, but the actual physical manifestations are low, and we want to keep it that way. You look at what's happening in Europe, and we need to learn the lessons before that level arrives.
So how come, if that's all okay, how come you can't announce where your next meeting in Melbourne is?
I would love to be able to do so, and I'm sure those in the Jewish community who wish to attend know how to find out.
So if you don't know where it is, you're probably not someone that you want there.
Well, those that we don't want there have also found out, some of them have found out, but look, I'm conscious that you were attacked. And
Melbourne is different. I keep telling you, Melbourne is different. Something needs to happen. I don't know whether it's the law enforcement, but there's something in the water. And the ABC is the most biased here as well. What can I say? David, I wish you all the best with your group.
Thank you.
It's a shame that some of those, the mainstream groups are trying to drive you out of business. That is a pity. And denying you venues, that should not happen. This is Australia. And like I say, wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
After the break, Victorian MP Rachel Carling Jenkins, she got an awful shock last year.